Hey everybody, this is Shane Schultz. I am the creator and host of the Arisen Strength podcast. We do this every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This is a show that tries to encourage people to pursue their dreams, talents, and capabilities in spite of the challenges and struggles that they face. And we utilize a concept of support, empowerment, and after all the work, we deserve to celebrate. So that's what this show is all about. I want to welcome you to watching it this evening. We've got a really heavy show that we're going to be talking about. It's in regards to addiction. It's actually the second part of a two-part show, to where this particular part we're going to talk about the reaches of addiction, because I fully well know that the effects of addiction reaches far past just the addict. So you're going to really enjoy the show, I'm sure, and we want to get your feedback, so definitely let us know. We've got Wayne the Hack Hacker, the producer of the man. He is here today. He has been working frantically for this past hour, driving me crazy, but he does amazing things for me, so it's a true pleasure to have him with me. And I definitely benefit for it. Another person who I benefit from is having Crystal on the show. Crystal, how are you doing?
I'm good, Shane. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, thanks. Crystal.
Good. Hey, everybody.
Everybody say hello, Crystal. Okay.
Welcome to the show, Crystal.
Thanks, Wayne.
We always have a better show when Crystal's on, because she always has a different type of look or a point of view than Wayne and I, because Wayne and I really go from looking at it from the patient's point of view in a lot of ways, and Crystal goes from it from being a medical professional as well as an advocate for people who have their struggles and challenges. So it's really great to have Crystal on the show.
Yeah, part of why we like Crystal on the show is we're not professionals, and we're not here to give medical advice. And Crystal is here to remind us not to give medical advice. And being a medical professional, she can recognize when we're giving medical advice. And she's that's part of her duties is to pay attention to us, make sure we're not giving medical advice. We like to tell you, see your professional, see your doctor, stay med compliant. But work with your doctor. Get the kind of program that you need that works for you. We're all different. We all have lots of different journeys we have to go on. But it's good to have that connection with the medical community and take your medical advice from them, not from a couple of guys on the radio.
I like that.
No matter how entertaining they are. We stumbled upon a nice feature with our show as to where we're able to take on some questions while during the show. Wayne, why don't you talk about that and introduce it, make sure that everybody knows how they can ask the question.
Yeah, while you're watching the show live on YouTube and in the YouTube video, whether you're watching pages, or if you're actually on the YouTube site, but if you're watching the YouTube video, there in the video you'll see basically a banner ad at the bottom. It says join the conversation, and you click on that, and that will open up and bring you to your window will change a little bit, but it'll open up a question answer box on the right side of your screen, and you can type questions into it that will get sent to us, and the questions will pop up while we're doing the show, so you can produce the show a little bit on yourself by asking questions, and then we'll try and work the conversation around to either directly respond to your questions or just kind of get around to answering your question in the discussion. But you can help drive that discussion by be part of the conversation, just like it says.
Yeah, and we will make sure to get an answer somehow to you, either through the show or I'll personally get in contact with you either through direct message with Facebook or email, or it's not out of the realm of possibility, I might call you just so that I can be able to make sure that that we are able to answer the questions that you're asking. Because this show relies on feedback. It relies on people being part of the show and being participants of the show. Because without the audience, the show is really only for us. And I go to therapy. I don't you know, I mean, I can do that on my own. I don't need to hear me talk about it. So you know, folks, really, and all joking aside, we really do appreciate your feedback and letting us know, you know, how we're doing, as well as getting the questions out, because that's what we're here for, is to be able to advocate for the patient from the patient's point of view, as well as to be able to help, like I said, to help them pursue their dreams and talents and capabilities in spite of the challenges that they face. So it's an important thing. What else? Oh, we had an announcement that we got to make on Thursday, is to where we're going to actually expand the Arisen Strength concept. We're going to expand it out onto Blog Talk, and how we're going to do that is through the Journey into the Light network. This is something that just kind of came out of the blue. In fact, it came from feedback from one of our listeners and audience. They thought that we would be great to be on the network, so they went ahead and they made a contact to the network, and then the network contacted me. So just how important the feedback is to us, because it allows us to be able to grow even more. And I know Wayne's looking forward to joining into the journey into the light.
Yeah, we're still in the early part of hanging out the specific details about time and what night it'll be on, but it'll be an archived show, so if you missed the live broadcast, you'll be able to catch it in the archives. We encourage you to be part of the live broadcast so you can get involved with the question and the answering, and seeing us in a little bit different form.
Yeah, and we would be able to have different shows. I mean, we don't necessarily have to talk about the show that we do on Sundays or even on Thursdays. I know Crystal's got a few shows that she has in mind, that she would like to see come to able to help that. I mean, that's what we're looking to do, is to be able to expand and be bigger, but still not lose the concept of Arisen Strength. That, Crystal?
Oh, absolutely. Blog Talk's got the venue and a great chat room.
Yeah.
You guys will have fun there.
Yeah. I mean, I've been part of Blog Talk in the past, but this is a different way of doing it, as to where we're doing it on our own, and we're going to, we have Michael Long. He's going to be the person who's going to do. He's going to host the show that we plan on doing. But we're going to be able to talk about a lot of different subjects that that we haven't been able to touch on yet, and so that we can grow just even more than what it is that we're doing, but still stay grounded to our concept. So I think I'm really looking forward to it, and we'll definitely have more information for you within the next couple of weeks. We're going to hammer out, like Wayne said, we're going to hammer out the day and time, so that we can get that out to people, so that they can know that we're going to be on. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to. So we news about our good friend Charles. Recently, as you know, Charles actually had some great news. He's been awaiting a kidney for a transplant for quite a while, for over 5 years. And so it happened to be, I think it was Monday, Charles came on and he ran right into our site, and he said, I've got to go because I am getting my kidney. And so he was being scheduled for a transplant. The procedure went fine. The procedure went with no problem whatsoever. But so what happens is that he came out in the recovery room. Everything went fine, just as what would be expected. So we went ahead and we broadcasted the fact that Charles was doing fine. It turns out that recently Charles has been having some complications. So with that being the case, he's had to, he's had to be sedated quite a bit, and he is with his family, and everything is, it is what it is right now. I can tell you this, that the kidney is still viable, which is a fantastic thing, and that he is in good hands medically with his doctors, and he's in definitely good hands with his faith, with his higher power. So I can assure you that those things are true. And as soon as we hear anything more, we'll definitely post that on our site, on the show, keep you all informed. I know that there are quite a few of our listeners, our audience, that know Charles through the different pages that he's on. He's got his own page, unveiling the stigma in regards to depression, as well as suicidality. And also, he's been a big part of what we've been doing here at Arisen Strength, which is the Essential Needs Family and the Human Factor page, which is the advocacy page for donorship. So I know that we all here want to wish Charles the speediest of recovery, and hopefully the best scenario that can be done right now. And I know, Crystal, I know that you're quite fond of Charles.
Oh, very much so. I love him.
So.
And if you're listening, Charles, we are praying and rooting for you.
Yeah.
You just keep fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you in our thoughts, Charles. And,
Yeah.
Keep being strong. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a few of our audience has been sending very nice well wishes in regards to prayers and thoughts for him, and I very much appreciate that. I'm sure that no matter how many that are there, I'm sure when he gets back home and he's able to look onto the site, it'll be a warm welcoming to him, no matter what the situation is, so that we can get him back into form and hopefully in a better situation than when he was when he went to have the transplant done last week. So.
Right.
So that's where we're leaving it right now. He is in good hands medically and spiritually, and we're going to be as hopeful as what we can be. And we wish his family the warmest of well wishes, and hopefully everything will just turn out just fine. So tonight we're the first show last week, Wayne and I were able to give, I think, a pretty good, accurate description of what it's like to be an addict, because both Wayne and I are challenged with addiction in our lives, just different types of addiction.
Right. Yeah, mine's a compulsive drinker. So far, 1,535 days. That's up a little bit. 1 day. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Wayne is a compulsive drinker. I'm a compulsive gambler. I also have an addiction towards suicidality as well. So this is something that I know a lot about in regards to the ins and outs of being an addict. I think that we were able to tell some stories that were definitely able to bring about the life of an addict from a different point of view, from the patient's point of view or the addict's point of view, so to speak. I know, Wayne, you talked a lot about what you were thinking as an addict, and I think that got a lot of people interested in what it is that you were talking about.
Yeah, mine was a couple different things working there. I think like a lot of addicts, it was originally the engaging in the behaviors that you make a choice to start using whatever it is, whether you start gambling or you start drinking. And there is a choice initially that's made, and a lot of times that choice is made because it fills some sort of void. I mean, it does something that wasn't just wasn't there before. Whatever, and that could be almost anything. And it's kind of just empty to say it, but if you've talked to an addict, you start getting out what was going on. I think initially for me, there was a sense of control over the way I felt. I mean, I think I was, mentally I was not in a good place, and I really felt like that I really had no control over sort of like the way I was feeling, but somehow that those first couple times of drinking, that there's a certain euphoria, there's a certain you get high, I mean you get drunk, and you feel different. And it's like whoa, and that's something that what I was doing when I was drunk, but there was some sense of control of what I was feeling, and then the other thing that kind of dovetailed with that was being able to sleep at night. There was a lot of enough drinking at the end, especially at the end of the day, could quiet down whatever was going on sort of mentally with me, and it's almost innocent. Maybe it doesn't sound innocent. Maybe it sounds scary, but it ends up being that you drink until you pass out. And then always make sure that I have enough handy, because there would be anxiety around not having enough to drink. If I went out and bought something, I better buy some more because I might run out. It's not a very healthy place. And then you end up engaging in long-term, really bad behavior. But it's the only tool I had. It's the only tool I knew. And a lot of getting through this was learning other ways of coping with whatever's going on.
Yeah, and we actually talked about blackouts too, which is something that you and I have something in common when it comes to our addiction. People don't really think about blackouts. When you talk about blackouts, generally it's in regards to alcohol. But I've done a lot of research, and I've come to the conclusion that there are blackouts for gamblers too. And studies are showing it more and more that. Your memory stops, and all it's almost like taking, and then you just continue on like a robot until you snap out of it and you realize what was the past, and something went on after that picture that you took a snapshot of. Because there's been many times where I've gambled on in the casino. And I remember the dealer at a blackjack table, sit there and say, "Sir, you don't have enough money in order to make that bet." And that wasn't the case when I took the snapshot beforehand. So that's something that we talked about. Does happen. And then we also talked about the feelings that we have. You had mentioned how. It's a coping skill in some ways. It's a maladaptive coping skill, and that's a big word, and what that basically means is it's a non-healthy one, and it's one that can turn into a much more bigger problem, which I know a lot about because I turned a big problem and made it into a huge problem, if not a two-headed monster, to say the least, that I had to go through. Because of venturing into the world of addiction that I never wanted to go into in the first place. It's like I mentioned the fact that my bio was a drug addict. He was an alcoholic, and he was a drug dealer, in fact. And so I knew I didn't want to be like him. He wasn't in my life for a long time, but he did leave an impression. One that that I knew I didn't want to be like him. Then again, I've also had the side of where my mother's side, where her side was, it was alcohol, but it wasn't to the point as to where it was more social and it was more accepted, I guess. From the standpoint is like, you know, the Krausers. You know, I remember stories about my grandfather's father. You know, have no idea how it is that he drove home. You know, because he had a list of bars that he would go to every day, and somehow he would make it home. And I remember that being like a funny thing, you know. But in actuality, you know, it was amazing that he made it home as many times as what he did. So, anyways, so we talked about it from the addict's point of view, or the patient's point of view, and you know, we're going to continue to do that, you know, this show and shows into the future. But the point of this show is that I'm very aware that addiction isn't just about the addict. And if you remember right, Wayne, I said we are not trying to condone, and we are not trying to, you know, basically say that it's okay for what an addict does when they're in their addiction. We're not trying to advocate that at all.
No, we were definitely we don't want that to be the message. We don't want that to be the takeaway at all. We want to validate people's feelings. We feel the way they. I mean, whatever was going on in my life, I mean, I felt that way, whether it was true or not. And last week, you talked about that. In the early parts of the gambling, where there was a certain sense of validation of, you know, when you were doing it, that you weren't getting, that you weren't feeling when you weren't doing that. Right. And it doesn't mean that people were not validating you. It doesn't mean that you know, it may or may not mean that. You know, the actual distorted thinking, that's another issue. But there is the way you feel, and so the first thing we do is we recognize that yeah, you felt a certain way. Right. Now let's take the next step, and now we can start talking about what you were thinking and possibly the distorted thinking without belittling the way that you were feeling, because that's an important part here is to validate people's feelings.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely felt the way that I felt. There was no doubt about that. I think the thing that was going on with me is that it was what was in my head. It was as real as could be. You know, it wasn't a distorted thought at all. You know, it wasn't until I started realizing and being in therapy for quite a while, and realizing that things might not have been the way that I thought that they were. You know, but and then again, they were exactly what it is that I thought they were. Not every single thing that I felt or thought was distorted, but it didn't need to be. It just needed a few things, you know, in order for me to you know, take this show, like I said, is to go into the many aspects that addiction affects a person's life outside of the addict. Because while this is a self-destructive illness, it doesn't just destroy just the addict. It destroys relationships. It destroys, you know, work ethics. It destroys friendships. It destroys families. I mean, there's numerous ways of it that it ends up reaching out far past the addict and bringing somebody into its very dark world. You know, I know for me, for a fact, you know, my parents, for the majority of my life, I would say that my parents were scared to death. You know, they had no idea what was going to happen. You know, between my my mental aspect, you know, with my depression, and then my addiction, put me into more danger and underground type of danger. They had no idea. You know, when there would be a phone call, you know, is it somebody that's looking for me, or is it somebody that's calling them to tell them, you know, that I no longer am living? You know, I know that was on their mind on a constant basis. And you know, that can do something to a person. It it doesn't even need to take that much. But I mean, I know that my parents went through that, and you know, and that's something that you know, I can't take it back from it happening. But all I can do is I can do my best in order to make my amends now. Or a different type of story with your addiction.
For much of the time that I was using, I was married, and so a lot of drinking definitely impacted my relationship with my wife. One, she wasn't a drinker, so a lot of stuff that I wanted to do or centered around my need, my desire to drink. So if we were planning things, a lot of times it would be, okay, if there's no chance of getting anything to drink there, maybe I don't want to go. So maybe you can go do that, or or maybe I better make sure I drink up first before we go there. So there was, going over to people's houses for dinners, simple, and already have been drinking that day. There would be, trying to, down, I gotta get home. I need to get out. I have to get some drinks in me. So there was definitely that, and because of she wasn't, actually I was not a drinker. If I wanted to drink, a lot of times it meant either drinking at home right there in front of her, which she wasn't a real big fan of. So then I would take it on the road. It'd be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go hang out with my friends. Yeah. And so now I'm not spending time with her. I'm spending time away, and not an occasional boys' night out. This was a pretty regular, occurrence.
Sure.
And then also, since I kind of really needed to drink, I don't know, I felt as though I needed to drink, at night. A lot of times at the end of the day, I was not going to bed sober by any stretch of the imagination, and that wears on a partner over the long term, and so it was certainly, it didn't help her grow, and she wasn't in a relationship where the relationship was maturing or growing in a way that she had anticipated or hoped or wanted, or in a lot of ways even had a lot of control over. That's a big part of the addiction, is when you have a relationship, any kind of relationship with a person who's in an addiction. A healthy relationship is a two-way street, right? There's a little bit of give and take. There's two people at work on the relationship. When one person's an addict, there's really nobody in control. I mean, and sometimes the addict is in control because they're the ones doing the using, but the whole relationship now becomes defined by the addiction. So there's no compromise. There's no give and take. There's it's just an unhealthy relationship is what it ends up being. And those types of relationships, they either end badly or they just go on until they end badly. I mean, there's almost like no happy ending to it.
That's for sure. One thing that I can without a question of a doubt, I can drill down to time. Me as a gambler, I was a sports gambler, big time. I was a bookie. I was a degenerate gambler myself. And so, what's the biggest thing that you need to worry about when it comes to the games? Is what time is it? And what time does this game start? What time is this game going to end? So that I can go ahead and put in the next game that's going to be going on. And I can just tell you, whether it be a family function, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be, just with friends, I can just tell you that, like Wayne had mentioned, there's very little control, and if there's any control, it's through the addiction. And so, so it would be nothing for where I would just disappear to make a phone call. To make a phone call to my underground ways of being able to put a bet down, and so or to get a phone call from somebody taking a bet from me as an underground person doing it for them. So it was one of those things as to where always watching the clock, it didn't matter whether the game could be 3 hours from now. You're always looking at the clock. You know, it's like, because you want to make, all right, you know, and it's like, okay, I need to get it down, you know, 10 minutes ahead, but I know that we're going to cut the cake at this time, and this person's not here yet. They'll probably be here within about an hour, you know, and so I'm not there. I'm not present with my relationships. You know what I mean? I'm the only thing that I am present with is what's going on in my head, and it's not healthy by any means. And so I missed out on a lot of stuff. You know, I missed out on a lot of conversations. There was a lot of different conversations that I didn't get to participate in because I wasn't really paying attention. You know, so it's like, so people would get the impression that I could care less what it is that they're saying, which it wasn't the case, but at the time it was the case. You know, anything else except for what we need to do, and you know, and so time-wise was a big thing, and you know, we've got Crystal on the show, and I know I talked to Crystal beforehand a little bit earlier today, and I know that she wants to bring it from a point of view of a friend of addicts as you know, as a supporter. Crystal, why don't you go ahead and chime in a little bit on this?
I'm just sitting here listening to you tell your stories, and I've told you both again, just thank you for what you're doing, because it takes such a strong person to do so.
Oh, thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
And thank you. That's all. I'll leave it at that. I'm getting feedback if I feel like if it's coming and going, so I'll just go on and let me know if you can't hear me.
Well, you sound great right
now. Okay, I'm hearing my own voice come back on the delay, I guess.
Okay.
I do not have any addictions except to sun drops and Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, you do have an addiction towards Keanu Reeves. I'll give you that much.
I've got a bad one, and if there's a Keanu Reeves rehab, y'all need to send me now. And don't bring me back until my attitude changes. But I have been very close friends with several addicts of different diseases, different addictions. Wayne was one.
Yeah.
He used to be my all-night buddy on Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, I'm the insomniac, and Wayne would be up all night. Now, he fought a lot of his battles without talking about them, but I still was privy to some things that were going on, and I can tell you it's the most heartbreaking and hopeless place that I think you can ever be. Shane, you were referencing like your parents and being afraid.
Yeah.
And as a mother, I can tell you that's your greatest fear.
Yeah.
You know, not only your child's getting involved in something, drugs, alcohol, or whatever, but getting that call, having the cops show up at the door or whatever, and also that addiction being like the other woman in your relationship or the other man in your relationships, because you can't compete with that addiction.
Right.
I don't care how beautiful you are, how interesting you are, how funny. That addiction comes first.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. You know, I can just tell you that my addiction let me tell you a short story. This will give you an idea of my addiction. I loved my grandmother beyond anything. When Wayne knows this, and she's passed recently, and I mean, she was my biggest fan. I mean, she went to my baseball games, she went to my golf tournaments, she was my biggest fan, and I loved her to death. And I remember a day as to where she was dealing with Alzheimer's, and although I didn't know that she had Alzheimer's at the time, I knew that she was, she was a little bit older, but not. She still was on the top of things. So she came to me, and she wanted to do this part-time job, and this is well after she's retired, and in which case I don't. So she wanted to do this part-time job, and it was kind of like out of the blue, and it was kind of like, what, are you crazy or something like that? And I can tell you that I convinced my grandmother that I had a business and that she was going to invest in it. So she went ahead and she wrote me a check and everything like this. And so, I sat there and I manipulated the situation. Because I needed money in order to be able to satisfy my addiction, and that was an everyday thing. It was 24/7 thing. If they could add another hour, it would be that hour too. So things were. I thought it was great. I had an avenue in order to be able to she was investing in me. I felt empowered. I said, okay, great. Then next thing you know, the well went dry. I didn't want to tell my grandmother that the well went dry. So what do? I went into her room, and I went and I'm searching for money, and I money out of the Bible. And trust me, folks, I am not proud of this by any means. I'm just trying to give full disclosure as much as I possibly can here. I took that money out of the Bible, and I went to the casino, and I made it from $300 into, I think it was like $1,800 or something like that. And now, I could have very easily gone back into the room, put $300 back into the Bible, and gave money to my grandmother in order to make her, feel better about her investment and everything like that. I could have done that. No, I couldn't have, because I'm an addict, and because I was in the world of my addiction, and it was because I wanted to make it better than what it was, and I'm also an extreme codependent, because I want to make everybody's world better, and not necessarily mine, everybody else's. And so I thought that it would be really cool to be able to set up my grandmother to do this and everything like this. To make things better for her. Let me tell you something. The bottom line is, I lost it all, And I remember a day I was living at my family's house, and all of a sudden, people are at my house, and it was during the weekday, so I wasn't really understanding what was going on. But I was well aware something was going on, whether it be my PTSD or just my instincts. So here it is, my family is showing up, car after car after car. And so I know something's up. Well, I go in and I'm kind of like spying. And we're in the garage, and I see my father unhook the garage door so that I wasn't going to be able to escape. So they locked all the doors, and he unhooked the garage door so that I couldn't open up the garage door. It was an electric garage door opener. So I saw that. That's all I needed to see. So I went and I immediately hit the door and got outside. The minute that I got outside, I knew I was going to be okay. So I got outside and I got into my car, and out comes my mother, and she comes running out the stairs. Where are you going? Where are you going? I'm like, I'll be back. I'll be back. I was back for 3 months because I was so ashamed of what was going on. and I was so ashamed of what my addiction brought me to. They knew that that I had manipulated my grandmother's situation. They had the checks. They were basically doing what is that called?
Intervention.
They were planning a family intervention, and I ended up living in my car for 3 months. While going through that, before I would even contact them. They never pressed charges or anything like that, but they were hurt, and they were. That's something I can never fix. And that's what addiction is. Addiction does things to the addict and the people around the addict that can't be fixed. That can't be brought back.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common thing you'll see throughout addictions is you can't quit for somebody else. And Crystal she hinted toward this. So as a supporter or somebody watching somebody in their addiction, how can you talk a little bit, Crystal, about that powerless feeling, or just wanting to, or trying to, or just because it's got to be the most helpless feeling in the world. One of them. Maybe I shouldn't be too hyperbolic, but it's got to. Can you talk a little about that helplessness of watching an addiction from the outside?
No, Wayne, I tell you, it's probably one of the more painful things that I've ever been through in my life, because it is so. You want so badly to be able to jump in there and save that person that you love. And you would do anything. You would take it on yourself. And there's not a darn thing you can do but be there to support.
Yeah.
And, I've been there with a lot of my friends, and looking down the pit of that hole with my friends there, and I'm hanging on by my toes trying to pull them out, and they wanted it so badly, but the addiction was just all-encompassing. It just controlled everything. And even though that was my friend that I loved so dearly that I would give my life for, they had no choice over turning their back on our friendship for the addiction.
Yeah. It's a loyalty.
It breaks your heart. I mean, it breaks your heart.
It's a loyalty that can't be explained. I mean, it really is. It's unconditional loyalty, but at the same time, it's not conscious. It's something that it's an illness.
And I think one of the difficult parts is playing that part of being the supporter without being the enabler.
Yeah.
And this is where support groups can help. This is where professional help comes in handy. Is how can I be this? How can I be a support for this person without becoming an enabler? And or do I need to actually just pull away completely? Because sometimes that's, believe it or not, all the love in the world can't save every relationship, and sometimes it's the pulling away that you have to do, and that's a real delicate balance there.
I think that was my undoing a little bit, because like Crystal said, I didn't want to be an addict. I didn't want to hurt people. I didn't want, my parents, they raised me up the right way. I mean, it's not a blemish on the way that they did things. I mean, it was, I was predisposed, for one thing, and to it. And another thing is that between my depression and my addiction, they just played off of one another. It was like my depression would be, I don't live. I want to die. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this anymore. I- and and then it was like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to die? You know, and then you know, and then in my head, my addiction sitting there saying, and it's so welcoming, you know, because it's like, well, I can pull you out of this. I can make you feel better. I can make you, you know, not want to, you know, be in dread for the rest of your, you know, days, of which it felt like it was going to. Um, I can remember. Oh, man, this. I promoted this show that it was going to be emotional, but it was this is. Um, it's really heavy. I can tell you this, that when when I was dealing with my depression, um, before I was going to commit suicide, I had already said this is it. I'm just existing, and it's only a matter of time. I'm just waiting for the trigger to make that final move. You know, and I remember going to a friend of mine, and he's an addict as well. And I remember telling him that I've got a big problem. And he thought it was about gambling. He thought, you know, I had 5 years in recovery and everything. He thought it was gambling. And he said, okay, well, we'll get through it. And I said, no, you don't understand. I don't want to breathe. I don't want to live. I'm in trouble, and I know it. And he says, okay. And I says, the only thing that I can think of that can take my mind away from trying to kill myself is to gamble or to participate in my addiction. And of course, at first he's like, no, that's not the right thing to do. But then he realized how serious I was. And he said, all right, let's go to the casino right now. He says, I'll take you right now. And I mean, I sat there and I'm like, you know, I wasn't gonna have him lose his, you know, his time in recovery because of me. So I said, no, don't worry about it. He said, I'll take care of it. I said, but just stay in touch with me. And so he says, all right. And he did. So what I ended up having to do, it was to the point as to where I just put money onto a game. I hadn't bet in 5 years. You know, I had no idea who was on the team or not anymore. I mean, I knew it was like their sons were on the team compared to the guy. Oh yeah, that name, Curry. Okay, well, yeah, but it was the grandson of the Curry that I remember as a kid. You know, but anyways, I just put money on games that were on television to basically keep my attention. And my addiction basically said, it's okay, I'm going to save you. In the meantime, the demon is sitting there laughing. You know, you're back with me. You're back into the fold. You know, I mean, I remember actually writing a piece where I was in a cave, and there was this voice from the cave, as to where it basically said, haven't we been here before? And I'm like, yeah, but this feels right. You know, and I walked further and further into that cave, and farther away from the touch of my family and my relationships, and my worked further and further into the cage. And I had this candle, and then all that came by and was making that candle flicker, and it was like that the life of that candle was my life. And so you know, here it is. I'm doing everything that I can in order to protect that flame, and then all of a sudden it blows out. And when it blows out, there's this evil laugh that's in that cave, and that's how I like that's how I tell the analogy of my addiction. I mean, that's what I went through. that's what my life was in my head for many years. Okay. So, Crystal, I know what you're talking about when you said that they really wanted it, because I wanted so badly to be out of my addiction so many times. But the problem is that it worked 24/7, you know, and it was to the point where it just waited for me to be weak at the time, and then it took me out. I don't know. You have a similar thought on that, Wayne, or?
Oh, but I was going to say, a phrase came to mind was when we were talking about this, and when Crystal was mentioning being a supporter, and I mentioned trying to be an enabler while you're being a supporter, and it's a phrase that I know that it's come up a couple of times in the Arisen Strength podcast series, is throwing water on a grease fire. And this is an example where this comes up, where this is where, you know, this is an expression that I know you like to use, and really the meaning of it is people with the best intentions just not doing the right thing because they just don't know what to do. I mean, you throw water on a grease fire, it's not your intention to spread the fire. You're trying to put the fire out, but when you put water on a grease fire, you do exactly the opposite. You spread the fire. You do not put the fire out. You spread the fire by putting the water on the grease fire. And when you're enabling an addict, you're in a sense you're doing the same sort of thing. You're perpetuating the problem. You're keeping the problem alive. Not that it's your job or your fault that the person's an addict if you enable them, but if your intention is to help them, enabling them is really the pause and to don't be an enabler, be a support. And how do I learn to be a support? It's just like I learned how I have to learn to fight a fire. Is I need some education. And so that's a sign. If you've got an addict in your life and you really want to help them, and you don't want to pull away, because one thing to do is just, like I mentioned before, you can pull away and just let them sort their life out, and then you can re-engage with that person. But if you want to continue and engage with them and be a supporter, then you have to be educated. And there are groups out there for family members, supporters of addicts. Al-Anon is a great resource to learn how to do that. Because if you want to be a supporter of an addict, please educate yourself first so you don't end up throwing water on a grease fire.
Yeah, and that's pretty much why that's how I got started, because what Crystal was talking about kind of clicked. My problem is that I had my depression and my addiction going on. So my mother, especially my mother, you know, she went to a doctor and everything, and she went to a therapist, and they told them, you know, you can't do anything. And so, you know, the tough love thing came into play. As to where that was the way that she was going to be able to handle it. But that was not the best way to handle it with me, you know, because I was sitting there. I didn't, you know, I'm not saying that I would, at the time, yeah, I probably wanted to be enabled, but you know, I think I needed more nurturing on it a little bit. And that was because we were talking about two things happening at the same time. So that was like water on a grease fire in a way, because it was like that tough love type of thing, you know, to where I felt very alone and isolated, and more so, and which led me into that direction. So anyways, so you get the gist. I've dealt with addiction. I know what addiction is. Addiction has had me in more danger than I can possibly talk about on the show. Whether it be legal reasons or whether it just be time-wise, there's just not enough time. It damn near killed me. It had me do numerous suicide attempts, and to the point to where I didn't want to live, and that was just the bottom line. But then I found a thing called recovery. But Why don't you talk about recovery in regards to what you know of it?
Well, when I think about recovery is this part is that part of getting clean. When I think of recovery, I think of the part of getting clean after that initial period of abstinence. It's after that part of kind of stabilizing your life, where you can actually start doing what I refer to as sober living. I think any kind of real, for me, any real recovery has to have as a goal sober living, which means really kind of living free of the addiction. And free, a lot of times, free of the addiction is almost it's more than, the addiction is more than arm's length away. You try and keep it a day away. Because it probably never really goes away. I mean, I think you hear that a lot. You're never cured of addiction. And part of that is you can always get sucked back in if you're not careful. And you especially get sucked back in if you're not engaging in a sober living, a sober lifestyle, if you're not making choices and having thoughts that keep you away from using, beyond just the thought of don't use. But I guess in the drinking world, they probably use an expression in all of, I hear it in the drinking world, is if you go to a barber shop often enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut. And a lot of times, in the drinking world, it's most closely related to, if you go to places where they're serving drinks, eventually you're going to get a drink. I mean, it's just one of those things that happens. But it's also not just a place where they're serving drinks like at a bar, but it can be if you're putting yourself in a position where you're around a lot of active consumption. You got to be really aware of that and ask yourself, am I making the right choices in my life if I keep ending up around drunk people? If I'm always around drunk people and I try to use the excuse, well, these are the things I like to do. I like to go to football games. I like to, and so then I go with my buddies and they all drink and I don't. Or I like to do Friday nights with the gang from work. Well, we're always out, we're drinking. Well, if you're always making these choices that are putting you in these vulnerable positions, you might have to re-examine the choices that you're making. I mean, that's part of this sober living, is put yourself in a position where you're making choices that aren't putting you in danger, and that's a big part of recovery, because then it just releases, it lifts a burden away from you. For me, I wake up in the morning, I'm not going to drink today. I try to do this as a daily commitment. I leave open the possibility if I have a really bad day today, I may drink tomorrow, but for today, I don't want to drink. And then I also have my life planned to some degree, that I'm not engaging in behaviors that are going to put me at risk. I try not to engage in at-risk things, so I try to make sure that I'm living my life in a way that it's not a risky lifestyle. When you're an addict, boy, I talk about a risky lifestyle.
I think I proved that, huh? Recovery was something that when I found it, when I really found it, it was something that my higher power was in charge. It was one of those things as to where I had been in 12-step rooms before. I actually had a year, almost a year in recovery, and I gave it away in order to be able to distorted mind to be able to help somebody else through my gambling. Not a good plan, But when I finally had recovery within my life, it was a life that I didn't even know existed, for so long, because it basically took me, and I think that you've said this in the past, in order to be able to break a cycle, in order to be able to break a pattern, it generally takes a significant amount of time, and it's much longer than what most people think it takes in order to break a daily pattern, a daily cycle. generally it takes anywhere between 60 and 90 days, of which that is the first goal for an addict when they're in a 12-step program is 90 days. Outside of the 1 day at a time, it's 90 days. And for alcoholics, it's 90-90. For GA, it's not so much that but it is still emphasized as a 90-day goal. And then after 90 days, well, that's when the work starts.
Well, just to clarify for any of our viewers who aren't familiar with the phrase, for the drinkers especially, you hear the phrase a 90-90.
Yeah.
That refers to 90 meetings in 90 days.
90 days, right.
So that's what we meant by the 90-90.
And one of the reasons why it's not like that in GA is because there's not a whole lot of GA rooms that are out there compared to the numerous rooms that are out there for alcohol, and even for drug as well.
Narcotics, NA.
Narcotics, NA. So there's just not, and I don't presume to know why, but I have a guess, and that is the fact that it's more socially acceptable, and politics have a lot to do with it. You know what I mean? It's like look at all the different cities and states that are legalizing gambling, so as to be able to better their situation on the bottom line.
I guess in the spirit of tonight's title, The Reach of Addiction, at least with alcohol and with the drugs, a big part of that addiction is the lingering effect of the addiction, in the sense that you're drunk and you're high. You may not be using at the moment, but you're still a risk to society. You're driving your car. You might be at work operating heavy machinery. You're not just distracted with the thoughts of your addiction, but you're actually being, your mental capacity and your physical abilities, reactive time, are just way out of whack, and you are a danger to society when you're out in public. And so the gambling is a little bit more socially acceptable, but part of it is, hey, if you're not at the track, if you're not actively placing the bet, you're not as much risk to society. I mean, you're a little distracted, as Shane indicated, but that doesn't have the, at least from society's point of view, it's not a big deal. Hey, it's something you're doing to yourself. We're not going to beat it up too much.
And their view is, well, it's being done underground anyways, so we might as well make money off of it, or we might as well benefit from it. So, but anyways, I found my recovery, and I'll tell you, I was hurting. I was hurting, man. I was hurting. I walked into the room and I was still fighting. I just had this, this pattern in my life. I had this lifestyle of fighting in all aspects. I mean, I used to box. I used to throw hands and everything like that. But this was a different kind of fight. This was a survival fight. To where I would have boxing analogies. And, it's like it's not going to beat me and all this and everything like that. I got news for you, pal. It already beat you. You know what I mean? It beat you more times than you could ever imagine. And it was just one of those things as to where I just did not know how bad it walked me down the road. In a way. So, we about 90 meetings in 90 days. My recovery did that for me. Is that it gave me that break of the cycle, break of the pattern, as to where I could any means, but I don't feel that pull as much either, which was me, which is what I was fighting against all the time anyways. So, so then I'll tell you a story. One of the things that's very big in 12-step programs is sponsorship. And one of the things that I can tell you is that, when the day that I went into GA the last time, it was, I literally this again will show you the depths of my addiction. I worked at an office. I was I was basically homeless, and I was living in my car, and it was winter. So I would go back to my office, and I would sleep underneath my desk. And I can tell you that there was one day on a Sunday, as to where I just wanted the breath to leave me. I didn't want. I had done numerous suicide attempts, and they didn't work. So I basically. I just wanted to lay down and die. I have no idea what all of a sudden came into my mind or why it came into my mind, but I went ahead and I got up and I made a phone call. And I called my father, and the one that raised me. His name's Ken. And I said, I need you to take me to GA. I need you to take me to so that I can get my life back in order. And I fully expected him to say, can we go another day because I'm busy, I'm working on the car, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. My father is always tinkering around with everything. The man said, I'm coming to get you. And that was a big thing. And it got me into the room. And I started learning. And one thing about the 12-step program is that I knew that it worked for many people that were out there, so I took it as law. I didn't take it as a suggestion. I totally went by the bylaws of the program. And there was one day as to where again I was living in a motel, and I had nobody knew where I was at all. They didn't have a clue where I was because I was embarrassed where I was. But then all of a sudden, I didn't have money for a phone, and there was a payphone that was outside of the motel. Well, as I'm in the motel, the guy knocks on my door and he says, "You got a phone call." Well, I knew it wasn't for me because nobody knew where I was. So I'm like, well, I know this isn't for me. So I went to the phone and I said, "You must be looking for the guy that was before me. He's no longer here. I don't know what to tell you." He goes, and then all of a sudden, it was somebody from the GA room. And that somebody, his name was Dick, and I called him Dickie. He ended up being my sponsor. And to this day, I have no idea how he knew where I was, let alone how he had that phone number. So it was really a spiritual thing for me that in regards to my recovery. And I'll tell you, we're going past the time, and that's my fault because I kind of got into the stories because I really wanted to bring around what this really is and how serious I am about what addiction is and how far it reaches. My recovery allowed me to live again. It allowed me to enjoy life again and enjoy the sports that I enjoy. It allowed me to have my own business. It allowed me to have relationships. Now they're still strained. Don't get that wrong. They are still strained for the things that I've done, and I understand that. But they've given me that opportunity in order for me to have them as they are now. I can tell you one of the things that I don't have. That's a lot of pictures of me. My family went to a lot of different vacations and stuff. There's a whole lot of pictures. There's about 4 pictures of me in my lifetime, and I'm not in a lot of these pictures. So that's a constant reminder that I wasn't there. But my recovery allowed me to do things like this. I would never be able to do this, right? We would never be able to do this if we were as an addict. Recovery is a celebration for us when it comes to addicts, and I know that Wayne feels the same way. And Crystal, I know that you've been sitting there listening quite a bit, and I apologize for that. But you can tell that recovery is definitely a different life than
Oh my goodness, absolutely, that is life. That's where.
Yeah.
And then the one thing I think I'd like to throw in there It's just that it doesn't have to get to this extreme.
No.
You don't have to get to the bottom to go get help. The sooner that you can admit there's a problem to yourself, admit it to your family, go get help. Get you a team established, whatever it takes. And the sooner that you can address it, sometimes it's much easier.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take as long. Don't let it get so bad to where you're doing what Shane was doing and looking to take your own life. Reach out and get that help. It's there.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't believe what's in your head as an addict. You know, because it'll take you away. I mean, it'll take you away from reality. And you know, it's like to not lose it all.
There was no limit. Right?
No, I could sit there, I could win $1 million, and I would give it away. You know what I mean? It wasn't because I wasn't. It was because I couldn't stop.
Right. And, you know, anyone who's been drinking and people who use drugs, I'm sure they'd be able to, or whatever your addiction is, be able to say, yeah, I remember those times where it was never enough. Nothing was ever enough. You know, it's one of the hallmarks of the addiction.
Yes. It's
constant cycle.
It's totally tilted. I mean, but it's on tilt. That's never normal. I mean, it's like it's a constant cycle. You're right, but you're always on tilt. I mean, you just are just the way that is. It is anything but balanced.
And just to follow up with what Crystal was saying about, you know, if you suspect that this is part of your life,
get help.
You know, to get help as soon as possible. Yeah. Don't wait to hit rock bottom, as they say. But as we've talked about, and Shane talked about here tonight, we talked about a lot. You know, that turning the mind and being able to do things differently and to be able to think differently is one of the hardest things in the world to do. And it's a good thing to practice for all kinds of things in your life, even if you don't have an addiction. But if you do have addiction, practice, change your mind on something and see what your addiction. And that's a lot of times why it takes someone to hit rock bottom. And people will have a different rock bottom. There's going to be a rock bottom for one person. It's not going to look like a rock bottom for somebody else. But a lot of times it gets to that point where you literally have to hit rock bottom, only because it is so difficult to change your mind on anything, especially if you're not practiced at it. So we bring that up for a lot of these things, a lot of issues, is to try and turn the mind, try to think about things from a different point of view, try to take some professional advice. And that's a very difficult thing to do. It's not that little skill, that single skill of being open to new ways of thinking can save you so much pain in the long run when you need it. It's a skill that's worth learning, it's worth practicing, because
you'll be amazed. It's like Arisen Strength. I mean, Arisen Strength is part of this deal. I mean, Arisen Strength did not come about unless if recovery was in my life. It just wouldn't have come off. You know what I mean? And it was an example of Arisen Strength, as to where you'll be amazed when you find the ability to turn the thought or to turn the mind. You'll be amazed as how empowered you will be, because you are stronger than what it is that your challenges are. And when I say stronger, I don't mean fight addiction. I can guarantee you will lose. If you get into the ring with addiction, or no matter what it is, you will lose. So the turning the thought doesn't mean fighting it. Turning the thought means managing your life without it, and finding a way to get away from what it is, that grip that it has on you. Because it's not just going to be you that it's going to affect. It's going to be a whole lot of people. It's going to be a long list of people. It's going to be parents. It's going to be children. It's going to be sons, daughters. It's going to be friends. It's going to be coworkers. It's going to be folks. It's going to be complete strangers that will be affected by the addiction. So don't think that it's something that you can control, or it's something that you can just not do. It's something that you need to manage, and it's something that you need to stay away from as best possible. and that's what Arisen Strength is, to learn how to manage and to empower yourself to go in a different direction and what it is that's been suppressing you and putting you into a situation for as long as it has. And we've gone quite a bit past the normal hour, and like I said, that's my fault, and I'm all right with it, because I think that it was a message that needed to be brought out. So thank you for staying with us. We're definitely empowered through these types of subjects that we talk about. This happens to be the last day of May, which is the Mental Health Awareness Month. That's not to say that we're going to stop talking about these types of subjects. It's going to be the last time that we'll be talking about addiction either, or any other subject that we've talked about in the past. So definitely, stay with us. Crystal, thanks so much for joining us. I know that I didn't have you talk too much, but when you did speak, it definitely made a difference on the show, because it was from a different point of view that definitely needed to be brought about.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It was a lot of fun.
I enjoyed it.
And another reason why I wanted Crystal on the show was because we wanted to officially give our well wishes to Charles. He is a good friend of ours, professionally and and personally. So we want him to get better as soon as possible, as well as his family to enjoy having Charles back again. So we want to get Charles get better, and we want you back as soon as possible, and hopefully it'll be with the best scenario. So. Folks, I just want to say thank you again. We were going to do a different subject. It was going to involve Charles, so we're going to have to switch gears a little bit. We'll let you know early part of this week what that subject's going to be, and we'll go from there. And so, how it feels in order to be suppressed. I know how it feels to be challenged and struggling. And I also know what recovery helped me bring my Arisen strength to help others. So I want to say thank you again, and we'll see you again soon. We'll see you on Thursday night with a recap show, and we'll see what we can come up with for next week. Have a good night, folks.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, folks.